Welcome to Three Devs and a Maybe, the podcast series for beginner web developers and general web enthusiasts. Now, introducing your show hosts, Michael Budd, Fraser Hart, Lewis Caines, and Ed Mann.
Hello and welcome to Three Devs and a Maybe. This is a kind of off-the-cuff special podcast, actually, and I'm with my good friend Paul Bowden, a.k.a. Betty, a.k.a. the guy that likes to hurt PCs by putting Terragon on in the heat and covering their fans. How are you doing, Paul?
No, I'm not doing too bad, man. The listeners do not know that your name is actually Egg Muffin.
Egg Muffin, yeah. This is...
Egg Muffin the player.
Keeping it away from them for 27 episodes or so. I've been able to keep it away, but yes, now they obviously know Egg Muffin is my real name.
The people will know that your name is Egg the Player Muffin.
Egg the Player Muffin. Oh dear. Oh man. So how are you doing, sir? Are you enjoying this lovely weather?
Yeah, it's beautiful, isn't it?
It's really hot and
lovely.
Yeah, stuck inside, I'm sure. So that's even better.
Oh,
Talking to me, got to be the best thing in the world, eh?
Right, don't worry, it's clouds out there, so, it's safe.
It'll start raining. Oh, dear. So, yeah, for the listeners, this is kind of like a special episode where I was convincing Paul to come on because he's my main Linux man. He's the open source FOSS guy for me, and, I've learned a lot from him through the years and stuff. Like, he was the one who introduced me really to Linux and kind of that Unix world, and I thought, hey, who better to come on and actually talk about that stuff than the man himself, so, yeah.
Whereas I'll back you on that one, where, I've introduced you into Linux, you've got me into web dev and PHP,
Well, thank you very much, sir. Yes, that is what we do. We back and forth like tennis. No idea where I'm going with that. So my first question to you, good old Paul, Betty, is how did you get into computers?
Well, I first got a PC, was it back in 97, 98? Was it? I can't even remember the specifications of it. It was a Cyrix 166 processor. Obviously, it's a beastly machine, It had a 52-speed CD-ROM drive.
Living the dream?
Living the dream, man. Oh, don't worry. You also got yourself 64 megabytes of RAM, a gigabyte hard drive, mate.
A whole gig. A whole gig. God, how could you fill that up? I mean, that's just insane.
I know that, man. That was insane. Back when I was on Windows 95, it was hard work. I ain't gonna lie to you.
It's trying to fill that up. But a couple of installs of Flight Simulator and stuff like that, and
No, not even Flight Simulator 98 broke into it too well. I'm just saying.
Oh, and now look what we're doing, because obviously now you have how is your massive RAID doing? Your
ridiculous... apart from waiting for Western Digital to send my, they're going to send me, hopefully send me a new drive, because if I need it less than a month. But yeah, I'm just waiting for them to send it back, then I can have my degraded RAID array back in action again.
Yes, first computer then was this beautiful 95 machine, and so there was no touching of Linux back then, it was straight up, I'm a Windows guy.
No. Linux came in about 10 years later. This was literally my first... Well, it's a computer. What do I do with it?
Yep, exactly. It's like Notepad. I've got Paint.
Oh, was it a 14-inch monitor, which had a built-in microphone as well?
To be fair, it was colour, so you're living the dream. And it had a built-in microphone. Wow.
Do you know what the resolution was?
Go on.
1024 by 7.
Really? Actually, that's really good for that. Like 640, 480 or something would be like, I was thinking...
Do you know what made it worse? Windows 95 didn't detect the settings properly, so I could crank it up to something like 2560.
How well did that cope with it?
I did it a couple of times, actually. I did it... basically, I put it all the way up to the top. The screen got... what displayed on the screen was really small, then poof. Smell of burning smoke. I did spend most of the time tinkering, because I didn't have a lot of software on it, that's for sure.
Yeah, so 10 years later then would be the time that you actually, so about 07, you'd get into your Linux world.
07, 08, yeah.
Yeah, so what drove you to that then?
What was it? I used to get computer magazines back in the day, and there was a little section which had Linux magazines. They came with a disc with distros and everything like that. This was about 2004, 2005. So it was. I installed these distros. It was just like have a little bit of a play around. Didn't think anything much of it until I got my own internet connection, started reading up on it, seeing how things happen. It's just like I just installed it and went on from there, really.
Would you remember what distro it was?
Mandrake Linux.
Was it really?
Yeah.
Oh, mine was Susie.
Before the name changed to Mandriva and whatever it is now. I don't know.
So yeah, so when you actually installed it and everything, what was this like? A revolution? You were like, this is the way I want to spend my life. Why would I want to be on a Windows box anymore?
Well, don't forget, this was back in 2004, 2005. This is when I was just like, have a play. Oh, fine, I'll install Windows back on it again. Went into 2008, however, like I say, this is back when I had my own internet connection. I had it going through a router rather than going through what was an ADSL modem, which Linux at the time didn't support. So, for starters, I was able to update and install, my package manager and install things, which was a bonus.
For free as well, which must have been the thing. It's like, oh my god, all this software for free, and I don't have to legally download it.
Yeah, the first one, what was it? My first proper usage on it was Debian. I can't remember what was it? I think it was after Sarge. I think 5 numbers. I can't remember now what number it was.
So what drove you to that? What drove you to Debian then?
Just reading about it on the internet. Mind you, I think it was also due down to the time. Was it a couple of years earlier? You also introduced me to the world of Ubuntu.
Yeah, Ubuntu was it was the thing, wasn't it? And it still is kind of de facto if you want to show someone Linux.
Yes, because it's the easiest. It is the easiest one to use,
and it still
Hands
is. It
down.
was, yeah, absolutely. And I think they've really done a good job with that, and it's available. I think you could actually get PCs with it already pre-installed, can't you? I think is.
Yeah, there's actually quite a few manufacturers. Even Dell's had a little link in with that as well.
See, that's pretty cool. That is very cool. And I think actually there's a couple of machines. I remember looking for when I was on that laptop hunt. There was a Dell machine that was specifically for Linux. Well, Linux development is their kind of tagline, but really what it was the fact that all the drivers and stuff obviously were supported by Linux and Unix systems, so you could actually, because that's obviously the problem with Linux, and I'm sure you've had in your time, as you were talking about actually with your modem, is that stuff sometimes isn't supported. Graphics cards in particular is one of the ones.
Let's just say it's not as bad as what it used to be.
Absolutely. Well, when we
really
started off, it was awful.
Yes.
And we would just be lucky to have, oh, look, I've got sound, after spending hours trying to find, the tweak to get it to work on my, inbuilt audio on the motherboard. So,
don't remember. Yeah, and plus also with with the AC97 codec, it's sort of made when you had the volume quite high, you could hear a lot of distortion and sort of just ugh.
It's oh dear. It kind of makes experience, and that is the trouble. I think the hackers and people who are proper geeks like us, we were like, yeah, it doesn't matter, we'll work around it and we'll spend hours. I still remember setting up desktops with your art slot and then screenshot them, put them on DeviantArt, and
oh god,
back in the day,
darling, DeviantArt.
DeviantArt, sorry.
How could you not pronounce that one properly? Do you know what makes it even worse? I think I've still got some of my old screenshots.
Have you really?
As well.
Oh, we're going to put those in the show notes. If you send them over, I'll put them in the show notes.
Oh, no worries.
God, I don't think I've got any of mine left.
What is it? It goes back to 2006, mate. Oh, no, 2005.
So this is the thing with your age, you just have everything. You have your whole life is still available in these hard drives. So, Linux. I think the word Linux, it's a funny one because I think people get it very confused. I did. It's only a couple of years ago till I actually got the true meaning of, because some people say Linux and then you've got your diehards who actually say GNU Linux, and GNU, or Nix-like systems or Unix-like systems, derivatives, Mac OS X is a Unix-type system, and stuff. And I suppose first question I was asked is, what is Unix?
What is Unix? Well, that means going back to the 1970s, doesn't it, really? If you want to get the whole history.
Bell Labs.
Put it simply, it's a disk operating system.
That's it. It was a very good one, wasn't it? It was Ken Thompson and Dennis Ritchie, the guys, you may definitely know these people, were the ones who actually made the C programming language. And kind of, I remember watching a Unix, I think it was an AT&T. They put all their old promotion stuff online, and I'll put it in the show notes, and it was quite funny because it was them talking about Unix, and you're just like, we still use it in this way today. And the way that it was, the idea, your Unix philosophy, that you had a simple set of tools that each performed a limited, well-defined function, function program, but together you can combine them together to make scripts and stuff that were able then to make these complex, awesome, powerful workflows. And I think that kind of won out, and its simplicity was almost its strength, and its, because it allowed to build these complex systems. And yeah, so it's multitasking and stuff like that, and it was an operating system built by AT&T Bell Labs, and I think a lot of they kind of licensed it out. I think they licensed it out quite cheaply, I think, at first, or I could be completely wrong there. But
they used to, yeah, until the situation got mucky with BSD.
So to put it in long story short, there was a lot of problems there.
Yep,
but people loved it, and the actual kind of general goal of the Unix system, operating system, was amazing. I still love to this day the fact that it's a unified file system. The fact that you mount drives as if they're file directories and stuff like that. So all these functions and all these kind of actions you have are able to easily be used in all these different kinds of environments and kind of settings and stuff.
Yeah, and all you need to, if you're going to be mounting something exotic, like for instance ButterFS, even NTFS on Linux, all you need to do is just go to your software repository, download the add-on. It'll either get compiled in user space or compiled in the kernel, and they're sorted. And
so without that was great, and people were using it. And our friend Richard Stallman, who will make a big part in this, podcast, yes. He was using it and he loved it. Obviously, the problems happened, and one of the things about this system is it wasn't free. Free as in beer, it wasn't free as in you could just look at the source code and everything. It was licensed out. Yeah,
what it basically did was reverse engineered and saw how all the core utils worked, and then. Well, I think it's him and I think it was just him actually.
It was him at first. I think he was I think he was a scientist, wasn't he? And and he was like, I love this system. I want to make a free version of this. And he promoted, he was so GNU.
He originally did that for his Mac. He originally did that for his Mac kernel. That he
did. He really?
Oh, yeah.
Dear. So and his aim was to look. I love this system. I want to make a free version that's pretty much. And this is where you get the Unix-like derived systems. Is really the fact that they act like the original Unix. That Ken Thompson and Dennis Ritchie made, but obviously with licensing that allows you then to use them however you want.
Yeah, I think. I'm obviously not using the original equipment myself. There might be a few differences as well, but
but on a whole, it's kind of very similar and in the right kind of direction. So he went about, and I think it took him a fair few years, and he was able to do. One of the big ones was the C compiler, core utils, so that gave you all your functions like your methods like ls, move, cat, and stuff. Your GNU debugger, and even your bash shell. And so these were all because building up our operating system is a very, very, very hard thing to do, and there's a lot of components to it. So he was setting about doing all these parts, and so these were the parts quite high level, with the core utils and everything that you're able to use these things, and compiler to be able to compile software, obviously using the C language that Dennis Ritchie made and Ken Thompson made. But one part though, this is where GNU. So you think GNU, and he had this whole idea that yes, he was going to make it. So he was building this, and eventually he'd come to a kernel. Now a kernel is the final part of the puzzle, and the kernel is the idea. The way I get a kernel, you could tell me if I'm wrong, is essentially what kernel does is it connects the application software to the hardware of the
That's
computer.
Pretty much how it works, yeah.
And it's a very complex part, but it's a very vital part because obviously if your application software doesn't have a clue what's going on hardware, vice versa, they're pointless. Now, he had a quite ambitious goal with his kernel that he wanted to make. I think it's called Herd, wasn't it, that he wanted to make his one, and it is actually still being made, and it was being built and everything, but the architecture was quite advanced.
Yeah, it was
quite complex.
It is. The Herd was the operating system. The kernel was called Mac. No, Herd was the whole operating system.
Cool. So he wanted to make. So it wasn't like he wanted to make distributions. Then he just wanted a operating system like Unix that was called Herd.
Yeah, it just so happens that a certain Linus Torvalds.
Yeah, Linus Torvalds. So this is where it comes in, where Linux comes into it, because so he was making. I think he was a student at the time, and he was very interested in kind of, building up these systems and everything, and he built a kernel. Now, the kernel was called Linux. Linus Torvalds, I think it was 1991, and
Yeah, because he started learning about it, but because of the Minix distributions and work on that. The guy that built the Minix operating system, if I remember his name, give me a sec. What was it? Andrew Tenenbaum. He basically did it so people can learn how operating system works.
So he open sourced the software. Everything was available.
Originally, his software wasn't open sourced. Do you know something? Wikipedia's a great friend at the moment. Right, I'm gonna quote something from Minix.
Go for it.
Minix was released in 1987, complete with its source code made available for universities for study, for courses and research.
Right. So that's where they got their licensing. So their license was you could use it if you were.
So it's originally commercial open source.
Awesome. Linus Torvald, he really liked this. He's from Finland? Helsinki, which is in Finland, isn't it? I think.
Yes.
Yeah, awesome. I know my geography.
I was going to say, you did geography at school, didn't you, darling?
No, I did not. Well, I did, but I didn't do it well.
Neither did I, but even I know it's in Finland. Jeez.
So yeah. Anyway, he started building up this kernel, and he released it, and people were like, "Whoa!" And it was like, this is way further along than good old Richard Stallman's one, and they were like, let's plug in, let's work around the C compiler and everything to this kernel, and let's see what we can do. And it wasn't, and this was I think the beauty of it was the fact that it wasn't ambitious. It was very much a simple monolithic, similar to other kernels at the time.
Originally the kernel, I think originally he wrote the kernel he did it as a study for himself,
just to see how it went and how it worked.
Yeah, see if he can do it. And then people on the internet saw it, over by BBS and stuff like that. You got yourself the kernel, get yourself the core utils.
That's it, exactly. You need
and Richard Stallman opens the GNU core utils as a free open source software. And that was starting the basis of
what we know as GNU Linux or Linux. Yeah, so that's it. I mean, so Linus, he had the kernel done, and awesome. We can now plug in, through a little bit of, work, but we can plug in the core utils, the compiler, the debugger, the bash shells, Emacs eventually.
Yep, pretty much.
Yep, and then that's great. And now, obviously, it got a lot of buzz because it was free, and it's awesome. And just think of this, the fact that this Unix-derived system, this Unix-like system is this open source, everything's free for you to use and edit if you need to and want to. You've got the kernel now, you've got all the core utils, etc. We can get going. Obviously, there was a bit of controversy, and there still is, about the naming, because GNU Linux doesn't really roll off the tongue as just Linux or Windows and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And Mac OS, OS X and stuff. So, so the actual reason why people will call it GNU Linux is because actually technically that is what it is. It's the GNU, high level compiler, core utils, etc. with the Linux kernel.
Basically, the Linux part itself is just a kernel.
That's it, exactly.
The GNU part makes it run.
Exactly, and a lot of, and that is, and I think I was looking a couple of weeks ago, like at the percentage and stuff, and like the percentage of there's not a lot more, but there's more of the GNU stuff in there than there actually is of the Linux kernel, percentage-wise within the system, which actually makes sense, obviously, because the stuff on top of it, I mean, I know the kernel does a very important job, but it does one job in a sense. And I suppose that kind of gets us into so Richard Stallman's done all this great job. We've got Linux, we've got this idea. Now is there just one? Now that kind of is then when it gets confused. So obviously, we've got one. We all decide on one, like Windows. You've got one. Maybe you've got different versions and stuff. We've got a Pro version. So we've got Linux Pro, Linux Standard. No, obviously not. No, we don't do that. We have different distributions, and that's how, because it's free, everyone gets a brilliant thing about open source and everything is everyone gets to fork it and do what they want with it.
Yeah, pretty much. Which is a nice example of that. Well, Red Hat Enterprise Linux, where you have to pay to use Enterprise Linux, but with that you get yourself some top dog support. You just call them on the go. It's just like, I've got a problem with this, la la la. But there's a complete free fork of Red Hat Enterprise Linux, obviously without the Red Hat branding, which if I remember right, you was running on your...
I am indeed, yes, CentOS, yes.
Yes.
It's community enterprise operating system. So yeah, this is where the distributions come in. So you can kind of think of distributions in a highish level of, they're just different versions of, the Linux kernel and the core utils and different mixes and matches. I suppose I think I'll go on to that. So you've got your kernel, on top of that you've got your core utils, etc. On top of that, obviously we want graphics. Now Linux doesn't deal with that, and neither does the GNU stuff. GNU does, but the core utils doesn't. But there's other projects obviously to want to do with graphics and window managers and stuff like this, and this is where you get things like KDE and GNOME. And so these provide you with the pretty, we've got the Windows and stuff, and desktop environments.
Don't forget the server that runs it all.
And this is absolutely, because that was another thing. Like when I remember reading was they wanted to call it GNU, or is it GNU Linux X? Because obviously X system is the actual thing that runs all the graphics.
The X rendering system.
Yes. And that currently is still the most popular, isn't it?
It is. It's the only one that people use now,
Have you ever played with any others?
Well, my phone's running Wayland at the moment, but obviously that's still very new. It's there's still work that's being done.
There's a lot of work to do. There's a lot of work to do, isn't there?
Although I must admit, working on my phone, it works flawlessly. But it's just for the fact of getting it onto desktops and stuff like that. It's because it does things so differently from what X11 does now.
Really, the API is completely different, and as well, or there's no port then.
Well, you can run X11 programs on it if you must, which use X Wayland. Basically, it has running in the background an X server that'll port it into Wayland.
Oh wow, that is a lot of work just to get your system. So so you've got kernel, core utils, etc., compiler, blah blah blah, bash, for shell scripts, for like you've got your shell, interpreter and stuff like that. Boom. I then have my X being able to start playing around with some GUI stuff, and then on top of that you have window managers. Now, what is a window manager, good sir?
What is a window manager? Well, it's like, for instance, when you were booting into a Windows system, you've got your desktop and everything like that.
That's a really bad question. What I suppose what the best question actually is, a better one, is to ask, what is a window manager compared to a desktop environment? Because you see that quite a lot, where you've got DEs and WMs, and I'm like, what are these?
Window manager, that does the basics. It just gives you separate windows for different programs. A desktop environment gives you the extras like start bar, everything like that, but it's still all encompassed with a actual window manager. So everything still has a window manager running. It's
just kind of like with frills, like all the frilly bits and stuff is the DE.
Oh yeah, pretty much.
So can you give it some examples of like window managers and stuff that are quite popular now?
Well, are you talking about? Are you talking about? How do I put it? Are you talking about just basic window managers, or are you talking about ones that are interlocated with desktop environments?
How about ones that are just basic window? If I just want a basic window manager, I want no frills of a DE, I don't even want any idea that there'll be a DE, what would you recommend, or what would you think, kind of what comes off the top of your head first?
Oh,
awesome, hell yeah, sir, absolutely. I was hoping, I was trying to. That's a tiling window manager, that is. That's
yes. Don't look, we also need to go for the explanations of what's the difference between a tiling window manager and the other ones. TWM as well.
I've never heard of that one. What is that?
That's the one that comes in built with the X windowing system.
So they provide their own. So even the X window system actually uses a window manager, even though it's quite a simple one out of the box.
Yeah, it's how do you call it? It's called a reparenting window manager.
Awesome. So
now, go for an explanation of that. It's a window manager that adopts all other windows. So basically, how Windows does things.
That's it. I think that, I suppose
you've
actually
got Windows,
you've got like, for instance,
you've got 2 windows. You can cascade, you can tile it, whatever, really.
Yeah, because I think for listeners as well, like, we are so used to now in the world of Windows, we think of it that way. Windows is called Windows for a reason, but like the window managers, stuff like macOS and stuff like that. We all use these window managers, and that really is the idea, as you were saying, Paul, is that the idea that you're able to move around software programs that are actually contained in Windows, Windows environments, and I think that is a very good sell, and it was a really good sell, for people, especially coming into these GUI environments and stuff, because there's a lot of ways. I mean, there wasn't just a reason why we all decided, we all want to use Windows. There's a lot of other options out there, and this is where you get, we were talking about tiling window managers, and the idea of that there is that instead of having windows that are free for all, you're able just to freely move them around as you will. Tiling ones is the idea of, simple as tiles, is that you're able, then you've got this fixed finite amount of space, but inside of that then it uses all of it, and that's what I love about it on my laptop and stuff, is it uses all of it. So you've got your windows and you're able then to segment it up, chop it into bits and stuff, like almost,
and it'll stay full screen.
That's it. Yeah. Absolutely.
So it means you can, like, for instance, you can, if you want 2 windows open, you've got one open, so it takes up the full screen. If you want another one to the side of it, you can literally split it in half.
Absolutely.
And you've got one application on one side, one application on the other,
and no wasted space. That's kind of it. And I suppose that's so funny, because I suppose we now, obviously I'll bring up Windows here. Hey, guess what? Windows 7, or Windows Vista, I don't know which one came in with it first. You can drag, your window to the side, to the left or the right, and it will take up half the space, and you can drag the other window to the other side.
That came in at 7, actually.
It came at 7, and you can do that. So in a sense, it is very similar, but there's a lot of Chrome around this. The Chrome, we call it, is the stuff like the closing, maximize, minimize buttons and stuff like that.
I call it the dress. The dress.
The
dress. I don't know.
I like that a lot. So
the frilly knickers. I don't know. Whatever you like to go for it.
So you've got your window managers. So that is what deals with that, and then on top of that, you then have this idea that we get the frills. We get, this is the all singing, all dancing, and these are your desktop environments, and this is where Linux kind of makes it easier for, or GNU Linux, makes it easier for people to come into this game. Come in and because it provides you with an environment that you're very similar with, like with Windows and like Mac OS X.
KDE is one of the perfect examples.
Absolutely, because and it's that. KDE is pretty much identical in its way of the start buttons at the bottom left.
It's got a nice mix. It does take. It's got a nice mix of what Windows does and some Mac OS X stuff. But I'll tell you, this is something I've read actually. That way Windows 7 pins one app to one side of the screen and pins another app onto the other side of the screen.
Yeah.
But KDE came out with that first.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
And KDE, you can pin it into 4. You can pin it.
You can do the little tile.
You can pin it into 2. Yeah, you can pin it into 2. Cool. So one on the left, one on the right, or you can pin it into 4. You can have 2 on the left, 2 on the right.
Very cool. See, you're a big KDE fan, aren't you?
Yes.
Even in your voice now, I know it already from previous experience. But yeah, the listeners can definitely. Yeah, there's a lot of love for you with KDE.
Oh yeah, it's so easy to use, but you can do so much with it, which is
so. Other than KDE, which obviously you have your biases with, what other desktop environments are out there that people will see, when they go into the exploration of Linux?
XFCE, that's one of them. There's also GNOME as well. There's
an interesting one with GNOME though, isn't there? There's GNOME 2 and GNOME 3.
Yes.
What is that about? And I'm sure people will get really confused with that, where they have a normal-looking GNOME or normal-looking desktop environment to.
Is the best way to explain it. Think of GNOME 2 as Windows 7, GNOME 3 as Windows 8.
So good. And that, listeners, is the nugget you should take away from this episode. It's so true, so true.
Although I can't fault GNOME 3 as well, because
it's not that bad. Like
it is nice to use, especially since it's now down to revision 3.10 now. The usability is really nice, but
and you're going to see that when you use it. If you boot up an Ubuntu distro, you're going to see it.
No, not with no, because that doesn't use GNOME 3. That uses its own implementation, doesn't
Oh,
it?
is it its own? Is it their own fork of GNOME 3 or?
Well, it uses some of the. It uses GNOME 3 base, but Unity. There we are.
Unity. So
They
Unity.
use Unity.
And as you'll see in the open source world, this is one thing about it. It's a great world to live in and work in, and kind of keep up with. But it can get very, very confusing with the amount of forks, because obviously people go, I want to do it a different way, and they do a fork, and then another one would do a fork, another one would do a fork. So you're going to get these things, and so we're like, just saying that I thought, GNOME 3, it was using GNOME 3, kind of using GNOME 3 a little bit, but it's using its own fork called Unity.
And also, on the bar on the left-hand side, that's coded in Qt.
Is it really?
Yes, it's coded in Qt.
See, this is it. So again, like other things that, so these small little bits of it.
Because it uses QML.
QML. And what is QML?
QML is the Qt meta language. It's a user interface markup language. It's JavaScript based.
So they really are going down the Windows WinJS kind of route, and WebOS. Let's just say I'll bring that up, my beautiful WebOS.
I still need to see your phone.
You do, Palm Pre. Oh, long live the Palm Pre, eh? Long live the Palm Pre. And
cheers, HP.
Thank you.
Now, since you sold it to LG, now we see it on smart TVs instead.
I know.
Bloody marvellous.
Oh, dear. But, so I think that is kind of a good rundown of what a GNU Linux system actually is. I mean, there's a lot of layers to it. But to be honest with you, your best bet really, and one of the things that Linux has strove for now is to make ease of installation and ease of use.
Yes.
And we were talking about it before, but Ubuntu is definitely the easiest setup you will ever have.
There are a couple of... there is an distro that I would recommend is OpenSUSE.
OpenSUSE, because another one I say is Mint as well, which is very similar to the Windows kind of. I know that a lot of people who are from the Windows world go, I'm going to try Mint because it's very similar and it kind of is a good gateway. But what about OpenSUSE? That's KDE, or can you?
That can be that defaults to KDE, but obviously you can choose what is it? You can choose GNOME 3, which is the Windows 8 of them all.
The Windows 8, I love that. I love it.
XFCE, which what is it? Linux Mint and Linux Mint's a way of how things look basically. And XFCE, very similar, very easy to use.
I do like XFCE. I think my personal recommendation for people wanting to come in, I recommend XFCE. It's very much similar to, think of it as like the WinXP kind of thing. I kind of look at it as. If not probably a little bit less, maybe a Win 2K type thing, 2000 professional.
Maybe.
Looking kind of, a nice simple. It's like GNOME 2.
It's simple, it's quick, it's very usable, and it just works.
That's it. And I think another thing with our conversations is everyone has their biases, and everyone has what, this is the way to do it. And I think it's one of those worlds where it's a really fun one to be in, because it's almost like, I try and do like a metaphor for it. It's more like, it's like decorating your house, or decorating your room. You can choose what you want. It's like, what do you want in here? And with the Windows world and with the Mac OS X world, you're kind of tied to what they give you, really. You install it, great. It's like, partition wise, I want these partitions, and you install it, and that's pretty much it. You can do cool stuff like TinyXP and like revision, and do funky hacks with the registry and stuff. But the world, absolutely. But the world of Linux and Unix type systems and GNU Linux and stuff.
You don't need to do that. You can just easily get rid of certain services as long as dependencies.
Well, that's it, and I mean, it goes from the fact that you could have a system where you're all right, so you could download an ISO that I'm like, what, screw it, I want Ubuntu, I want a DVD that's like almost a gig big, and I want everything like Windows
and
world.
What makes it even better, actually, with Linux distributions, you can run them as live CDs.
That is one thing I was going to say, because you can
literally just put it onto a USB drive or a CD drive, boot it, use it, see how you like it, and if you're happy about it, you can install it on a later date. If not, fair enough, go try and find another one.
See, that's a very cool thing. I mean, when I first started out, I don't think that was around, doing live CDs.
Live CDs, Knoppix. Do you remember that one?
I don't know.
Man, you've missed the period of Knoppix, the first proper live CD. Oh, dear.
Can you give me a date range on that, or is it
What, Knoppix?
Knoppix? Because is that still around?
Yeah.
Knoppix. I've never heard of that one. Again, this is where I come and go into this world, and that's when I ask Paul, like, I say, what you can't run, you know,
Right.
And that's a fun thing, because you can kind of say, oh, what you're running at the moment, you know, and you may run a completely different distro, you may be playing around with certain things, and I'm sure later on in the episode we'll go on to what we kind of use at the moment.
Install Gentoo.
Exactly what I was going to say. We'll go into what we use, etc. But yeah, so I mean, you can go, and I think this is the world of distros and stuff, is that because of the kernel, because it's a simple base that you can kind of mix and match what you want.
And it's so flexible. Once you get to know more about Linux, you can start playing with it a bit more. You can try more exotic distributions like Arch Linux, which I think you're running, aren't you?
I am indeed. I will.
Who got you into Arch Linux?
You did, sir.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And this is it. I mean, and the nice thing about these distributions and stuff, obviously, is you've got the ones that say, I want the gigabyte, I want the Windows world of it, or I just want something that can actually fit, like DSL, you know, damn small Linux. I just want something to fit off a USB pen. And, you know, I mean, legitimately like in 120 megabyte or something stupid. And, you know, it won't have the frills and spills, you know, frills and everything of the Windows world or,
but
you know, your Ubuntu.
But it's still usable.
But it's still usable, absolutely. And it will use a completely different, you know, window manager. It'll probably use something like BusyBox or something. And
BusyBox is not a window manager.
Oh, what is BusyBox? I was always under the assumption that it's a window manager.
Bash?
Yes.
It's an alternative to Bash, isn't it?
Ah, so it's kind of like it's an interpreter, a shell interpreter then.
Yeah, it's a shell interpreter. It's a different shell interpreter, and it comes with its own set of core utils.
Wow! So is that all under the GUI? Is that under the GNU license? Or
oh yeah, it's basically a shrunken down. It's basically a shrunken down list of core utils. It's designed to fit into mobile phones. You know something really small where
that's
you.
When your Nokia N900 can go, or N90, you know, can.
Yeah, my N900 had a BusyBox. The phone I've got now, the Yola, that comes with Bash.
The full Bash. You see, this is
it comes with Bash. This is because it's got enough.
That's it. Enough horsepower. Enough horsepower in it. You can
call it enough horsepower. You know, it doesn't have the memory constraints.
Yeah, I mean, and that's kind of a rundown of really the world of, you know, how things are. I think a lot of people kind of, I would be scared, you know, like, oh yeah, go and use this free thing, and it's like, what is this, and how does it kind of work? And
I would suggest if anybody brand new to Linux, just go on. I will recommend Linux Mint. To be fair, if you want something similar to how Windows works, download Linux Mint, burn it onto a CD, and then just boot to the CD.
That's it. And
you can just use it there and then. Just see how. And
if you're more lazy, if you're even more lazy, you can just VM it. You know, make a virtual machine and load it out that way if you're so inclined. And
if you want to, yeah.
Yeah, and you can.
I think the key points are take your time with it. See how check out all the options.
That's what's like. What hurdles? So for a beginner, I'm a beginner. I want to look. Screw it. I hate Windows. I hate Mac now. I want to go down the free Linux route. I want to help build this software. I want to make it awesome. My server. I mean, obviously the podcast is directed at web developers, and one of the big hurdles there for a developer is I'm maybe developing on a Mac OS X box or a Windows box, but then my server is obviously probably a Linux box or a Nix derivative of something like CentOS, like Ubuntu or something, because obviously it's cheaper and it's a much better fit for that, you know, domain. You know, so we've got like kind of, I can go in the shell, you know, I can kind of terminal in, but thankfully I've still got my Microsoft Word, or thankfully I've still got, you know, Skype and, you know, all these, you know, and Spotify and stuff and Twitter, and I can still go on Chrome, etc. So I suppose what things, say I'm a budding kind of, I want to get into the Linux world, I want to start off, where will I go wrong and where will I have trouble?
Well, since you're going to be doing web dev, you're going to be playing a lot of time, if not all the time, or with the commands line.
Which is great, obviously, if you're in the Unix world. And
obviously, when you first look at it, it's just like, oh God, what do I do? It's a case of
manual pages. Manual pages to me are what I.
Man pages. You just
space.
But then again, you need to know. But then again, you do need to know what which commands to use, and obviously when you go into the screen, you don't know what to type in, do you?
Absolutely. I think I think that, and there's a lot of guides out there. Like I would say, the most important command I could ever have, or two actually, sorry, is PWD, present working directory, know where the hell you are, and LS, because then I know I can list a directory.
Do you know something? I never used PWD.
Didn't you? What'd you use?
Because it prints out the work
so you got your bash, you got your prompt out with it, and you can. That's another all the customizations. And actually, it's a funny word. This is another weird thing with web dev. Is a lot of people actually are very confident with the command line now with Mac OS X and stuff, but then they're not confident with, say, starting just using Linux. Kind of outright and say, screw it, I want to use Linux all the time. And that's what I think the question I would like to ask is, what, when I start using it, is there any hurdles I'm going to go through other than like the command line stuff, like software wise? Will I be able to use Windows Word, Microsoft Word, or will I be able to use Skype? Will I be able to use, or are there suitable alternatives that I can then take, and use those instead?
With most things, there are suitable alternatives, and with Skype, they've got Linux. They do have Linux binaries.
Some companies really are quite nice to Linux. Other companies are very much, screw you. You're not our main, kind of client. You're not our main focus, and we'll give you an old version.
Skype is now owned by
a certain micro dollar. So there's a couple of things that people will definitely want if they want to go into the world. They want browsers. Now, can I get my Internet Explorer? Can I get my Opera? Can I get my Chrome?
I'm afraid you can't get an Internet Explorer. You can't get Opera, the newer ones. However, you can get yourself Mozilla Firefox.
Sweet.
Google Chrome, kinda. It's going to be known as Chromium in the repositories.
Yeah, so you can get the open source what can't you with Chrome, and then you can get the version. They do provide a version that is their own. I still do. I know I'm really bad. I still do.
What? Really? Why?
I know. I like the signing in. I like the bookmarks and stuff. I know. I want to, Google knows everything about me.
Do you know what you can do on Chromium? The exact same thing.
Can you really? Can you sign in and everything with Google?
That's what I used to do on my Chromium setup on the...
See, I didn't know. I assumed it was just Google Chrome and all their funky stuff.
No. That's still implemented. The only thing that's not implemented in Chromium is the Adobe Flash Player. Which we do need to let listeners know.
Yeah, that's another thing we definitely need to talk about.
Limited to 11.2. They won't be making any more updates. But then again, who cares about Adobe Flash anyway?
Well, unfortunately, it's still around, isn't it? That's the only problem with so that's
HTML5.
There you go.
I'm just saying.
So with Chromium, so comparing Chromium to Google Chrome, what are the differences? So say if I'm a web dev and I want to come to a Linux platform and I'm looking at this, it's got
a different coloured icon. Yeah, Chromium version. There's some inbuilt things it doesn't come in. Like I say, Adobe Flash is one of them with the Pepper plugin. The second one.
That's the thing with the Linux world. How do we deal with stuff like Flash and Shockwave and Air and all these Java, etc.? How do you get around that, and how should listeners do?
Java you can get from the repositories anyway.
And there's two different versions though, isn't there?
There's
the Oracle version and the open version.
Ice-T.
Yeah, Ice-T, and I recommend Ice-T. Like in the world of Java and stuff, Ice-T is anything that's going to be made kind of experimental and stuff, and pushed into the next version is updated into that Ice-T version beforehand. So yeah. I recommend using that. It's exactly the same, if not a little bit better than the standard Oracle binaries.
Well, of course it's going to be better than the Oracle binaries because it's not owned by Oracle.
There you go, absolutely.
Because you remember the time where OpenOffice, it's got owned by Oracle. Right, let's split.
That's another thing I'd like to like. So you've got. So let's run it down. So you've got Java installed. Great. You've got Shockwave. Can we still get Shockwave? I don't know when the last time I actually used it, but
does anybody use Shockwave anymore?
I don't know. I assume it's an Adobe product now because it used to be Macmedia, didn't it? It was like
you can still install it, but
whoever uses it. Flash. How am I going to deal with Flash, sir?
Well, you are either limited to 11.2 if you get it from the distros, or you can install the binary Google Chrome.
See, Cougar. So that's a good thing.
Which will have the Pepper plugin built in.
And they have so that is one nice thing about Google Chrome is that they kind of said, look, we're going to provide our own Flash version and kind of fork it. They did fork it, didn't they? And they've got their own version, or do they just run in sync and then they just do whatever they need to do to make it work for their own distro?
Well, every time the browser's updated, if there's any updates to Adobe Flash, it'll update at the same time.
So is it the same code base exactly, or is it kind of their own forked, modified version of it?
No, it's still the same code base. It's just the way it's interpreted into. It's just the way it communicates in the web browser is different.
See, now that's quite cool. That is quite cool. And finally, Air and Adobe Air. Obviously, you can install it as well.
I think you could probably get some binaries for it, but you're still going to be limited to 11.2.
See, that is a very sucky thing, but oh dear. But yeah, so it is possible to still, use these things still, and stuff like VLC, for videos and stuff, etc. Now, the one thing that people are going to have problems with if you do want to move or to Linux or play around with it is stuff like Photoshop. Now, I know there are nice alternatives, but there is no alternative to Photoshop.
Whatever.
Yeah, this
whatever.
Is the thing. Yeah,
it's just because they're too afraid to change. That's all it is.
Yeah, well, it's the same. I mean, it's like, let's talk about text editors. I'm gonna, we get into the Vim Emacs debate and stuff. So I can kind of understand.
Well, I'll forward him a GNU Nano. So I'll just
some Nano in there and some gedit. So, but then obviously people are very attached to Photoshop. Now, there's a couple of ways you can go about that. If you've got a high enough spec machine, you could do a virtual machine using something like VirtualBox.
Or you could also use the other option, which is going through Wine.
Now, that's what I wanted to kind of move on to. So, what is Wine? Why should I care about it? And will it get me drunk?
Wine is not an emulator, is its full name. Basically, it interprets Windows commands into Linux commands, vice versa. So basically, you're able to run Windows binaries in Linux, or you can get Wine installs for Linux, Mac OS, and BSD, and you're able to run your Windows programs.
See, now that sounds to me perfect. That sounds, hey, why would you ever want to then touch any Windows box again if
compatibility issues?
See, now that's what I was going to say. Yeah, because so
I mean, there's a lot of work around the portals have got to do to get.
I was thinking that
working.
It can't be that, I mean, this is just the magic pill, isn't it, surely, Linux all the way. If I need to use Office, I just have to install it using this. So there is problems then, is there? It's quite touch and go.
Well, probably doesn't help as well, because most programs that you install on Windows are proprietary, aren't they? Really. And the way they work is they're undisclosed. You've got to reverse engineer how
they have to have all
game
the fun.
engine runs,
Yeah.
It's a lot of work on to interpret, but for basic applications, things that people use very often, Photoshop, for example, you can run it in Wine.
See, now that's very, very cool. And I think, so give that a try. And I think I kind of come down the developer route where my need for Photoshop is very limited. And if I'm on my laptop, I'll just fire up a VM with it.
Although to be honest, I don't know what this one about Photoshop. Microsoft Paint's always done good for me.
Oh god, that's for the pros though.
That is pro, mate.
Pros use Paint.
Pros do use Paint, and also you make squiggly lines and all that.
Hell,
I mean,
yeah.
can you do that in Photoshop
this is
without complications?
Expressionist art.
And don't forget get the paint. Don't forget get out the paint can.
Oh dear. So that kind of so you're in there. You've got those things now. Office now. Where's my alternatives for Microsoft Office? I'm sure I can install it with Wine, but is there one that I can actually use on the system itself?
If I remember rightly, I think you can definitely run up to Office 2003. I think they've got implementation. Well, I haven't visited the website for a long time, but I think they're probably doing work with Office 2007 to get it to work. If you want derivatives, free open source derivatives, LibreOffice, which you can also run on Windows.
And OpenOffice is one I hear a lot about. So what's
no? You want to go to Libre? Ignore OpenOffice.
I know. Now, why would I want to ignore it? Is there a certain company there's
it's
a
part of
company,
Oracle, isn't it?
Absolutely. There's a certain company that we don't want to. I think that's one thing. So there was a lot of things, and then you can again on all the the popular platforms. OpenOffice was a big thing.
Ever since they stopped the Open Solaris project, no one cares about them. No one wants to have their name associated with Oracle.
Oh dear. MySQL still do. But then you've got MariaDB, I suppose, now, haven't they?
Yeah, even I'm running MariaDB.
Yeah, I do too. They're beautiful, completely sidetracked, but they've done a beautiful job of being able to say, look, we're compatible with MySQL, but we're going to make it better. I mean, that's just genius. That's
compatible. I swear it's exactly bit for bit. If you know what I mean, like commands, everything. Like that.
Yeah, compatible. Yeah. Sorry. What I mean is they've.
Was it 99%?
It's pretty much what they say is, look, you will be able to chuck in your MySQL database, whatever you had before, but we're going to make it better because we're going to do other stuff as well.
Technically, there's a swap-in.
Yep, that's it. Exactly, swap-in. So, yes, so you had OpenOffice, and that, it was great and everything, and pretty much, I like, OpenOffice Writer, I think is their, thing for their kind of the alternative for Word. It's great. Yeah. I mean, it's fine. I mean, obviously, we normally, text editors and stuff, Markdown, LaTeX and stuff like that. But, sometimes you do need to open up a docx file or something, and you could. You
only use LaTeX if you're being super saucy.
So, and you had OpenOffice, but obviously, with the Sun then getting purchased by Oracle, what happened was there was quite a few problems, as you were talking about.
I started crying, of course.
Everyone started crying. The whole world just went up in tears. And
it probably might have been just me that started crying, but
and then
I'm not ashamed of that.
And then LibreOffice came out, and so this is the one that you want to use. This is
that is literally the fork of OpenOffice, but it's not associated with Oracle anyway whatsoever. It's if you're already using OpenOffice anyways, switching to LibreOffice, it's exactly the same.
It's exactly the same. It's the same as that MariaDB talking about MySQL.
Yeah, basically, it's basically a swap.
So, I suppose that's another thing I'd like to talk about with them, because we've completely skipped it. We're installing stuff. So surely with on a Linux box, we're just installing stuff, and similar with Mac OS X, we're installing stuff with installers, MSIs or something.
And don't forget, this is supposed to be a web development podcast as well. So obviously you can have your lamp.
Well, I mean, this is it. I mean,
they call it lamps.
It's an interesting one because a lot of developers, actually, web developers and developers in general, they understand SSHing in, they understand, those things, because that's what they need to do to push stuff live. But to actually use it as their main operating system is a whole different ballgame. And obviously, dealing with servers and stuff, you're very much kind of the bare minimum. You're not using a desktop environment. You're not using a window manager.
It's you and the command line.
Absolutely, but there is one thing we all do use, and that is our friend the package manager.
Yes.
Now, in the Mac OS X world, people have used that. Homebrew is kind of their kind of. It's their. The idea was it was definitely taken from the world, from the Linux world of, look, package management, be able to install stuff simply. It was scripts, automating installation and stuff. And there's one actually called Cast as well, I think now, which is actually installing binaries as well, apps and stuff like Google Chrome, which is quite cool. And then in the Windows world, you've got stuff like. I don't know if you've actually got the same.
You haven't got really.
You haven't. They still do MSIs and stuff like that, and that so you can what with OS X you mount a thing, you install use their package installer and stuff, etc. Or you just drag and drop the app.
I think the best way to describe a package manager, package manager. Excuse me, let me get my teeth back in. I've been having this problem all day, believe me. Package manager. It's basically your port of call if you want to install anything. Every distro has a package manager of some sort. You do not have to go on the internet. You do not have to download.
Isn't that
packages.
Just amazing? Isn't that just like the coolest
thing?
It's
all in one place.
I mean, it's the most simple thing. You think for something so complex, obviously you can go external and compile it from source if you want, or stuff like that. But one of the things that drew me to Linux, and one thing I thought was so cool when I first loaded up, I think mine was Ubuntu, or was it OpenSUSE? And I was looking for the package. I was like, oh my god, I can install stuff. And like we do now with the app stores and stuff, where we're like, oh look, we can just install stuff.
Yeah, I swear they got the ideas from package managers, because they got pretty much the same use.
Yeah, it's exactly the same, and it's just like a nice front end for it. And it's just like you've got the Windows Store, you've got obviously your app stores, you've got everything. All of them have taken really from the Powder package manager, and a package manager is just amazing, and it's such a simple idea that obviously now all these other things are emulating and stuff. But as you were saying, Paul, like essentially it's your protocol for anything you want to install. You want to install something, you go to your specified package manager in your distribution. Ones that I'm familiar with are stuff like Aptitudes, Pacman, which is
that one comes with Arch Linux.
That's the specific one, isn't it? What other ones are quite popular, would you say?
Zipper.
Zipper? What distros have Zipper?
Anything that's basic, that's RPM, that uses RPM based packages. So that's OpenSUSE.
Is that Yolt? Yolt's another one, isn't it?
That's a nice front end to Zipper, I think.
And they are great because they'll
practically do the same thing. You can install packages, you can search for packages, you can uninstall packages.
Yep. And they will deal with all dependencies, and they'll deal with all the prerequisites and anything you require. It's like, I want to load up LibreOffice. I'm sorry, you need Java with that. Here's the prerequisite as well, and it would download it, and it would get it all from there, from the sources available and stuff.
No, what's better about that? You install LibreOffice. We recommend you install Java, but you don't need to use it. You don't need it, really. Who needs Java anyway?
Oh dear, I don't mind the JVM. It's a beautiful piece of software.
My memory does. My memory minds.
I know that. Yeah. See, you, if you're like, I'm a client, I want it. No, I want the developer to have the best time. I'm sorry. No, joking.
Well, only if you're coding Java, of course. If you don't, that's cool.
Yeah, so pretty much that kind of is the rundown of. And today you'll find, literally load up, as Paul was saying, load up a live CD, or just load up a virtual machine, get VirtualBox open, or, you probably use that. Which is owned by Oracle, but
let's give it that one for the time being, because VirtualBox is probably one of the easiest you can use.
Oh, it's awesome,
and it's still relevant if you want it.
And it's free. I thought it'd be quite cool at the end of the podcast, and I'm sure this is going to take a little longer than a couple of minutes because we've got passion for our setups at the moment. Our setups. Sorry. I'm just wondering.
You should see the setups I'm doing, love.
I was wondering, what are you currently running at the moment? Then, what's your situation, your distro situation, your setup situation?
Well, at this moment in time, what is it? My NAS box, which is holding all my hard drives, that actually is running Ubuntu at the moment.
Straight up, the new long LTS 14.04 in it.
14.04 due down to. We're going to go for some technicalities here. Due down to the fact because of the Mesa version, it comes with also the kernel version. It comes with 3.13, 3.14, which I'm able to use my ATI graphics with open source drivers.
And you're running good old XBMC on that.
Oh yeah, man.
Yeah, you got me into that. You've got me into that so bad.
So you see, now you saw the magic that can happen with XBMC.
I was like, I don't want to run it, and then I literally got home that night, set up my laptop box. I was like, yeah, goodbye, you.
See, now what do you install it on your Drobo? Or
I can't. I haven't got. I think that there is another version of the Drobo which has got like apps and everything, and it's like a network version. Mine was.
This is why you build your own, man. This is why you build your own.
I like the Drobo. The Drobo is a beautiful device. It's a bit pricey, but it does it all for you, which I know is lazy, but it's so nice.
Lazy, man. I expect you to be a better man than this.
I know. You see. But so
disgusting.
So your NAS is running good old Ubuntu LTS.
It is soon going to go to Gentoo because it's got because now in the metadata repositories it's got XBMC 13 now.
Gentoo. Well, actually, sorry. Before we go on that, so then you've got your laptop. What are you running on your laptop at the moment?
Windows 7.
What? Straight up Windows. Why are you running Windows 7 straight up?
Basically, I couldn't be bothered to fiddle around with MTP on Linux. I got lazy, man. Listeners,
I'm very sorry. This podcast has turned to a horrible event.
I know.
Shocking news.
I just wanted to use my my mobile phone and not faff around with MTP settings. So
I think listeners would like to know.
That's what I get for installing Gentoo, man.
Well, this is the thing with your phone, though. So obviously, you're running like what you rocking? An iPhone, an Android device?
I'm running a Yola.
A Yola. Now, what is a Yola? You see, now this is news to the listeners.
No, not a YOLO, but a Yola.
A Yola.
Well, you remember that N900 that I had?
I am very familiar with that. And for the listeners, so what was so good about the N900?
It was a tablet in your hands which could be able to do phone calls. And what could you do on it? You could do anything.
It had a QWERTY keyboard. It was beautiful.
And not only that, you could also cheevo into a full Linux distribution, full Linux Debian distribution, and yeah.
I never forget when you got the interpreter up and you were just going, "Oh, you want to load up Python?" The interpreter, and I was like, "Boom!" And you got Python 2.6 or something. I was like, "Oh my god!" This phone you've got now, then. So, what is so good about it, and why should people buy it?
It's basically the continuation of all the hard work that's gone into Mimo, then to Migo. It's a gorgeous operating system. It's fluid, it's usable. This phone can also run Android. You can also run Android apps as well, because at the end of the day, it's a new operating system. It's a new phone.
I think they've really done a very clever thing there, haven't they? They've said, look, the App Store is a very important part, and why not take advantage of this huge Android App Store?
And of course, the runtime it doesn't come included with Google Play, but you can install it.
See, that's such a geeky, awesome thing.
But the fact of the matter is, you don't have to be tied into Google to use Android applications.
That's it.
You use the phone.
You just have the APKs. Is there a package manager type thing for it, or is it very much?
You can download a few app stores for it, but you can also sideload applications as well. Yeah, sideloading is basically downloading the APK files to install the programs.
Very cool. So you just have ultimate free advantage. No rooting, none of that crap you have to do.
No need to root.
Awesome.
You can use it as you want.
For the listeners, what is Gentoo?
It is basically an operating system where you can compile all of your programs and optimize it with GCC, compiling certain features that you want, so you can have it running compiled to your native CPU. So you're going to get all the goodies from that. Because
that's the thing.
Optimization flags.
I would like to because now I kind of think, okay, that's cool with those apps, but surely you're not compiling the kernel from source, are you? Or
yes.
Really? So you
compiling everything.
So everything from source, and then you have full flexibility.
Admittedly, there is a
few things that have to be
which is pre-installed, which is offered by the Stage 3 Turbo.
That's what's up. Can you just go through this is just for me? Like how does that work then? So do you boot off like a live CD at first? Or?
Yeah, you boot off a live CD. They recommend System Rescue CD. And then you download the Stage 3 Turbo, which has all the essentials like Bash and core utils, things like that. Anything that needs to get a Linux system pretty much running when chi-rooted.
Yep.
It'll install that. Then once you chi-root into the partition. Oh yeah, you also do have to do all of your partitioning, all your formatting yourself. But yeah, it's a very hands-on approach.
But it's a very awesome approach because it definitely teaches you really kind of how a system is built up and the magic, because I think a lot of people...
And at the end of the day, it takes out the really hard bits. Like you don't need to download the actual source code, unzip it.
Yeah, because that's what I was going to ask. So how does it go about? So has it? I remember you saying something, a meta package manager. So is that kind of what that means? Is like it almost is a higher level where it's not got pre-compiled bins that you're already copying across. It's actually just got the bits where you need.
The ports collections, basically. That's the section where you can, because this is what the package manager for Gentoo Portage is based on. You can refer to it as a meta distribution because it's literally it is operating system independent.
That's pretty cool. So that because that allows you then obviously to be able to compile as and when you need to.
Basically, the why it's called a meta distribution because when you sync up, it downloads a little files called ebuilds, which gives the package manager instructions on where to download the source code, where to run, and once it's unzipped, what options you've got with it. So it means you can select by use flags, like I was saying earlier. You want to compile LibreOffice without Java. You can select it by going -JVM or -Java.
but it allows you it allows it to compile it for that architecture, but then also it of course then allows you to specify things and flags that you need and want for that build. See, that's very cool. I am very much interested in kind of trying that out. I'm not going to lie. Arch is...
I'll just recommend it if you know your basics.
Yeah,
that's what I will say.
It's kind of like the gateway drug into... Well, you see, they're all gateway drugs because you've got a gateway drug into Linux, and then you've got a gateway drug into kind of like, I want to do things really customizing.
Yeah,
and
you want to have hands-on approach.
That's it. And
because what got me into Gentoo was Arch Linux.
It's such a good, because so what Arch Linux is for the users is you build up the system. There's the documentation is amazing for it as well, and you can build up the system and you build it up from the core. You build up you load the live CD. You install the base, you C-root into actually a C drive, you install the stuff you need, etc., and you're doing stuff like that.
It's pretty much right. That's how Gentoo is actually.
Is it really? It's exactly the same.
Pretty much, yeah. Because you, apart from the fact that you need to compile them, but you've got that extra step. You've got that extra configurability. Whereas, with Arch Linux, you download packages, but they're set dependencies.
Yeah, and that's it. So, you with Arch Linux, it's a rolling release. I think that's similar with Gentoo, isn't it?
Same as Gentoo, rolling release.
You're going to find with like Ubuntu and releases like that you're going to have ones that we were talking about earlier.
You'll have version numbers.
Yeah, and you'll have LTSs, long-term releases and stuff, like long-term support. And this is like this is a snapshot. We're saying, look, we're going to support this version as we're talking about now, 14.04, 4 years or 3 years, whatever they're going to say. With like, our releases now, with like Gentoo and with Arch, is it updates everything as and when, obviously as software happens, you update things similar to your dependency managers and your package managers with software like Composer.
It will always be current. It
will always be current, and it's very cool because you get the latest and greatest. Like a lot of web developers and stuff. So we're setting up. We've got a package manager. We install Apache 2. Well, we install Apache, we install a LAMP stack, and we've got PHP, and we find out PHP, we only get with CentOS, we only get PHP 5.3.
Yeah, I think Debian gets 5.4. That's what I was rocking.
And you're like, well, hang on a minute, why is that? Surely the latest, and we know the latest is 5.5. Now, why do we only get 5.3? Is there a reason for that?
The reason for it is because they want to hold back, because they want they're first and foremost, they want stability. You don't want to change like for instance, you're making a broth. You don't want to change the ingredients too much.
You don't want to break something.
Tried and tested. Use if you want to get the latest and greatest stuff, you can always add user repositories.
See, now that's what I want to talk about, because I use CentOS, and I could compile from source, and I have compiled from source, PHP and stuff. But I found, there's a guy named Remy, and he releases these things, and these are user repositories. So are they similar to what we were talking about with Arch user repositories, that people have just hey, these aren't official, but they are official for this is what you're going to do.
Debian web server. That I've got .deb on there, the user repository for .deb.
Awesome. So, what about your website? Is your website live at the moment, or
our website is live after with thankful help?
And it's pbowden.info or pbowden.me? Which one is it?
It's pbowden.me.
pbowden.me, and I recommend it. There's a couple of really good. There's a couple of blog posts. Like any blog posts you want to mention, like anyone that could be interesting for people to check out?
Well, I've still only got 3 on there so far. They're all very interesting reads, but I'd like to. But I would say. Have a check out of blog post number 2, Linux and Introduction.
See, now that would be very cool for this podcast. So yeah, absolutely. And
okay, on the website, I do recommend to download Ubuntu, but I will recommend Linux Mint as well.
Oh no, yeah, I think they're very much similar, aren't they?
Get yourself a nice live CD distribution. I would recommend Ubuntu or Linux Mint. Those two are really easy to get used to. Have yourself sit yourself down and use it for a few hours. Don't force yourself into, I can't use this. How do I find it? You just sit down, make yourself some time. If you need to find anything, you can always go on the search engines. Those are probably the main things.
I think they're great, man. I think
take your time, just search it up,
have fun,
and have fun. Yeah,
break stuff. Like honestly, break. It doesn't matter. It's free.
And plus, if you do break stuff, it's a live CD. So what we have to do is just
reboot
a reboot cycle. Go back into the live CD. It's back to call it factory settings, you know.
Hopefully the listeners now, they will be interested in maybe getting a little Linux action in their life other than just on their servers. Well, listeners, thank you very much for this one-off special episode, and we will see you again next week. Goodbye.
And goodbye.
You've been listening to 3 Devs and a Maybe. You can contact us at contact@3devsandamaybe.com or follow us on Twitter at 3 Devs and a Maybe.